Good morning, Amy, and welcome back to the Paleo Show.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
It's our pleasure, of course. Good morning, Monsieur Mark.
Good morning. How are you both this morning?
Doing well here in North Carolina.
North Carolina. So let's get to it. Amy, thank you for coming back to our show. And, the last time we had a good time. Could you remind our listeners about you and your background, please?
Right. I am a low-carb and ketogenic-oriented nutritionist and writer. I am the author of the book, The Alzheimer's Antidote, which is about using a ketogenic diet as a nutritional strategy for cognitive impairment and decline. And my background, I got into nutrition and health the way a lot of other people do. I was carrying a lot of extra weight when I was younger, and no matter how hard I worked, no matter how hard I exercised, no matter how good I tried to keep my diet, I just couldn't get rid of this extra weight. And I stumbled upon the Atkins diet. The Atkins approach was my entry into lower carbohydrate diets, and lo and behold, it worked. And not only did it work, but I got to enjoy really delicious foods, and I didn't feel deprived, and the weight went away. And after that, and having been in and out of a lot of jobs that I just wasn't satisfied or fulfilled by, I realized, hey, like nutrition is a career. I could do that, and I can help other people learn about this way of eating. And so I went back, and now I have a master's degree in human nutrition. And over the years that I've been studying the biochemical mechanisms of what happens when you go on a very low carbohydrate diet, the weight loss at this point is the least impressive thing to me. I mean, you can massively improve things like type 2 diabetes, PCOS, hypertension, gout, chronic fatigue. I mean, you name the condition, and it pretty typically responds very well to cutting the carbs. So that's where I'm at now, and I do work with clients nationwide and even overseas. Tuitnutrition.com, TUIT nutrition.com. You can find out more about me and the services there.
All right, cool. Thank you. So would you like to share your experience so far with COVID-19? Do you still have confinement where you're living?
Yeah, so down here in North Carolina, we haven't been hit quite as hard as bigger city places like New York and, places in California and Seattle. But our peak is still rising. If the statistics coming out can be believed, our case numbers are still increasing. So I think we haven't seen the worst of it yet, or the peak. But yeah, we are still. I'm in a city called Durham, and the rest of the state of North Carolina is slowly starting to open, and Durham is being a little more strict. I'm starting to see some restaurants open, but they're having distancing, and masks are required in certain places with certain numbers of people and close quarters. So if you go to the grocery store, you have to wear a mask. So it's starting to loosen up, but I think Durham we're loosening up very slowly.
Right. It's kind of like Texas. So far, we've been mostly, out of the loop. But recently, it's starting to pick up again, especially around Houston. But we have quite a few cases in Austin too. Actually, I should be more specific. We have a few cases, and not necessarily a few extra deaths. Although we have some of that too, but. Right. A lot of people get really scared about the amount of case, but we need to remind everyone that there's a 99.2% recovery rate, or people that get it don't get really sick, or they get over it without going to the hospital, unless they have another health issues to add to the load. To that person. Right. Can you expand on that a little bit as well?
Yeah, so it seems to be that if you have, a younger person who's in fairly good health will either not develop this virus, not catch this virus, or if they do catch it, they might remain completely asymptomatic, so they don't even know they have it. Their body's just fighting it off like it's supposed to. Or they might have a really mild case. Like you said, they don't need to go see a doctor. They don't need hospitalization. They just kind of recover at home as if you would from a flu or a cold or something. Yeah. But other people who, if you're older, if you're immune compromised in some way, or if you have any number of what we would call a cardiometabolic disease or like an underlying condition, it makes you either more susceptible, meaning you're more likely to get the virus, and the prognosis is worse, so that if you do get it, you have a greater likelihood of needing hospitalization, possibly needing a ventilator, possibly losing your life. And these kind of conditions that make this scenario worse are things like type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and I would say metabolic syndrome, because most of those conditions, you know, we put so much blame on the weight, but the fact is all of those conditions, except the obesity, obviously, can affect people of any weight. You know, just because you're at what we would consider a normal weight doesn't mean you don't have type 2 diabetes or heart disease or you know, hypertension or any of these other things. So, you know, obesity is just the one that's easiest to see. But any of these conditions, which almost all come in some amount from chronically high insulin levels, that seems to make this situation much worse.
Right, right. In Europe, typically the people that would be affected the most would be older, you know, much older people, like much older than me, that is.
Well, yeah, much older, and also if, you know, some people have autoimmune conditions or certain conditions where they take medication that kind of reduces the immune response, and so you do have to be a lot more careful about what you expose yourself to.
Right, right. And but in this country, of course, the older part of the population is affected as well, especially in retirement homes. But because of the typical less healthy population in this country, with all this, you know, eating garbage food and fast food and all this and that, pretty much all ages could be affected because their immune system is messed up usually.
Yeah, I agree. I think we see this in all ages. I mean, young children do seem to be the most protected, for lack of a better word. You know, it's not that they're immune. Nobody's immune to this, but young children seem to be the least susceptible. And if they do get it, they have the best recovery.
Right. There's some debates as to the usefulness of ventilators. What's your take on that?
Oh, you know, to be honest, I really can't comment. It's not my area of expertise. I don't know enough about it. I wish I could, but I just don't know enough to comment. Okay,
cool. So tell us, how did you improve your own immune system to, you know, protect yourself from COVID-19?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I didn't do anything specific, but I already follow a lower carbohydrate diet. My blood sugar is low normal. My insulin is low normal. I don't really have any of those metabolic conditions that make you more susceptible. So I didn't really go out of my way to do anything that I wasn't already doing. You know, I already exercise. There's some debate as to the role of vitamin D, whether having low vitamin D levels makes you more susceptible, or contracting the virus can reduce your vitamin D levels through some mechanism. But my vitamin D is on the high side. I actually work at a local farm twice a week. So I'm out in the fresh air, you know, in the sunlight all day, 2 days. And then other days of the week I'm outside too. But on a regular basis, I'm kind of outside doing physical work in the outdoors. And I do supplement with vitamin C. I don't take it every day, but I take kind of a high dose liquid vitamin C that is supposedly more absorbable than other forms, because I do think that the way I eat, I don't eat a lot of foods that are high in vitamin C, and there's some debate as to the requirements for vitamin C when you're on a very low carb diet versus when you're on a very, you know, a very high sugar intake might increase your need for vitamin C. But even so, why not just hedge my bets and potentially reduce the risk, if there is any, just by taking some vitamin C. But other than that, I really didn't go out of my way to like boost my immune system specifically. And I'm not sure how much some of those things that are touted to help are effective.
Right. I pretty much followed the same path as you did. I kept the same diet. I just added vitamin C, vitamin D3, zinc, and elderberry.
Yeah, certainly all these kinds of like immune supporting supplements, I don't think they're harmful in any way, but I don't know that we know the degree to which they're helping. They certainly couldn't hurt though. I really don't think there's any harm in taking those things. I mean, we know zinc is critical for a healthy immune system.
Right. So speaking about exercise, what kind of exercise do you do yourself, or do you recommend for people staying at home?
Yeah, so my gym obviously is closed, and it's really unfortunate because I had taken a break from working out for a while. I lost my motivation to do it. I couldn't get myself to do it. I was walking a lot, and so I still kept that up. I was walking a lot, but then I got back into lifting and doing more intense cardio at the gym, and now the gym is shut. So since that has been closed, I've still been doing a lot of walking, and I try to get myself to do a little bit of weightlifting at home. I have several different size weights, dumbbells, and if you look online, you really don't need any equipment. If you have a body, there's your weight right there. You just do push-ups or different things with your own body weight. I don't love doing it at home. I really have to force myself to do it. Once I get started, within about 5 minutes, I feel good and I'm glad I'm doing it, but I have to get myself over the initial resistance to just do it. So I just do little things that, bicep curls, I do push-ups, I do some kettle, like I have a dumbbell that I use as a kettlebell, and I do swings, just things like that I can do at home that might not be the most effective thing for building muscle mass or whatever, but I just tell myself it's better than nothing. Right. It's really better that I get some physical movement in some way than nothing. And I always like to be careful. There's some people out there that may be disabled that can't exercise. Yeah. And I would say, if you can exercise, do it. If you can't, then try to be even more careful about your diet and maybe getting into the fresh air, getting sunlight, because you're going to already miss one piece that might be helpful here. Then you just have to pay more attention to the other things that you can control.
So walking should be number one, because it's easiest, plus it exposes you to the sun, so extra vitamin D, and it's always better to breathe some fresh air and get out in nature. So definitely recommend that.
And it's free. If you have a good pair of shoes, you have to invest in shoes, but other than that, it's free.
Yeah. Another crazy idea that just came to my mind is, like, if you like to dance, just put some dance music and dance and burn calories,
Yeah.
Whatever makes it fun for you. I also do yoga, and that helps, keeps me flexible. Let's address the mental and emotional issue. A lot of people are stuck at home, frustrated, sick and tired of being, the same, not talking to people or whatever. How do you address that, and what do you recommend?
Yeah, there's no blanket recommendation because people are so different. So for my case personally, my day-to-day routine isn't really all that different because I already worked from home and I have no children. So it's not like all of a sudden I'm stuck at home where I was previously going to an office every day, or had all of a sudden kids are home that need to be doing school virtually. And my grocery store, thank goodness, I feel blessed. It's open, it's fully stocked. I haven't really had any major problems there. And I'm a huge introvert. So I spend a lot of time by myself anyway. So my routine isn't that different. So if that's somebody's scenario, it's really, business as usual. For other people, it's really a huge change. It's an enormous disruption in their life, and you just do the best you can. And I think there's different, thank goodness for Netflix, thank goodness for Zoom, thank goodness for the fact that so many people can work remotely if they need to.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on kind of what angle you're asking about. I mean, if it's about trying to stay healthy and trying to eat a certain way, people seem to be going in two different directions. There's either people are having an easier time eating well because they're home and they're cooking more of their own food and they're not dining out as much. And then there's other people who maybe don't have a lot of cooking skills, who depended on restaurants to give them a proper meal. Even if you're low carb or paleo or primal, you can order that way in a restaurant if you know how to customize your order. And so they might have lost that lifeline to healthy eating, and now they're at home and they don't know what to do. So some people are doing really well dietarily, other people are not doing well.
But you can also get your food delivered still, or pick up. Even if you don't go to a restaurant.
Yeah, so grocery stores deliver, some restaurants are doing takeout and delivery. So you just have to make the best of what you can do in your situation. And I just lost my whole train of thought. I think for people that, if you've lost your livelihood, if you've lost a job or a business, that's a different case. But if you're just somebody who all of a sudden is working from home and you didn't before, or your kids are home, so for me, like I said, my routine is almost the same. That's a blessing and a curse. It's very nice that I haven't had any big disruption, but at the same time, it's made me realize how small my life is, that this huge thing has happened in the world and I'm just going on as normal. It's made me realize that when things start to open up more, I would like to be, I just moved here about a year and a half ago. But when things get back to normal, I want to become a little more invested in my community, start going to more of the local independent stores, start making more relationships with local, merchants. And I think if you're on the opposite side of that, if you're someone that used to go out all the time and surrounded by people and now you're home, if that's a problem for you, maybe use that time to ask yourself, why am I so uncomfortable being quiet? Why am I so uncomfortable spending more time alone? And it's not that it's neither good nor bad to be introverted or extroverted, but why is it difficult for you to not be going out 5 times a day and seeing people all day long? So it's a time for us to all kind of examine our habits and how we're wired.
Yeah. I'd also like to address the issue of, additional stress and depression as well. I know it may not be your specialty, but this is something that a lot of people unfortunately have to deal with. So any ideas, any comments on that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have up close and personal experience with depression. I have depression. I take antidepressant medication. Now that was before the virus. My depression has nothing to do with the virus, and I can't say it's gotten any worse. It's kind of the same as it was. I think that the role of diet and nutrition in mental health is so underappreciated. I think, things like a B12 deficiency or a fatty acid imbalance, a zinc deficiency, an iron deficiency, all kinds of nutritional imbalances can contribute to depression, to anxiety, to panic attacks, to all sorts of things. And then, of course, like we were saying before, sunlight exposure, fresh air, exercise, all of these things can really, really help with mood. If somebody is already addressing all of that and there's still a problem, then I think there is a role for modern medicine. Let's not throw it all out just because some medications are overused and might not be the best approach or the best first approach. Let's not completely ignore that it can be helpful in some cases, but that's definitely something that, people that had depression before, now it might be getting worse because they are maybe more enclosed and having less interaction. And then there's people that maybe didn't have depression before that now are starting to maybe have mild feelings like that because of such upheaval in life. If you can figure out why you're having the depression and do something about it, then I wouldn't use the word easy. It's not easy to fix, but at least there's a path forward. Like, okay, I know that this issue is causing this. What can I do about this issue? It's when you don't know the cause. It's when you can't identify why it's happening. That's a lot more difficult. So...
Unfortunately, the side effect of that could be excessive drinking, excessive use of drugs, legal or illegal, and it could lead to death in some cases, or aggravating your health if you drink too much, or there's more and more suicides popping up. Helplines for suicide, the helplines are busier than ever, 3 times as much as before. Yeah. So there's definitely something there that is not spoken enough about in the general media, that is.
Yeah, no, I think it's if you already had a mood problem or thoughts that were leading you to self-harm or something, it might be getting worse now. And then there's people that didn't have those feelings before that are having those feelings now. And yeah, it's depending on your coping mechanism. If you're overdoing alcohol or drugs, or even just binge eating, overeating food, I have a lot of sympathy for people that just find it difficult to cope. I think the best we can hope for sometimes is to find a coping mechanism that is less destructive, or that might even be constructive, like exercise or going for walks. And there is such a thing as over-exercise. I mean, just because some is good doesn't mean more and more is always better. But just if anyone listening or watching this is in that place, reach out. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't keep isolated. That's why those hotlines exist. It's why your friends exist. People care about you. You might not believe they do, but they do.
Right. We it's much more in America than in Europe. This society is much more individual, and a lot of people are living alone. So there's that. I live alone. I have a kitty cat, and I miss my buddies. I mean, I used to play pétanque, and I used to play ping pong twice a week, and I'm like, and then when I try to get them to go out and do it, they're so afraid that they just won't come out of their house, and that's just I can't be good in the long term. But another thing I noticed is that I've lived in this place for 30 years, and in the past I was too busy and I didn't have time or took the time to connect with my neighbors. It seems to be more of a neighborly feeling now. People are meeting in the swimming pool, even if they keep their distance. There's a little bit of a change in a community around this complex, that is. I don't know about other places, but so I'm getting to know my neighbors better, and connect and chat, and maybe they set up a Facebook page, so if there's an issue, someone lost a cat or something like this, is better communication that way, which is good. So
yeah, I think that is something. One of the small positives that come out of a situation like this is it's unfortunately it's not happening in my apartment development, but I know it is happening in other neighborhoods. And so many of us, does it really matter if you have 50,000 followers online that you'll never see in person, and you don't even know the person living 2 houses down from you? So I think that's a nice thing that's happening, is that people are starting to build more relationships, right, literally in their own backyard, versus, and don't get me wrong, one of the beautiful things about the internet is that you can connect to thousands of people all over the world that you will never meet. But, let's not forget, when a real crisis happens, somebody living 8,000 miles away can't help you, but the person next door can. And during the crisis is not the time for you to knock on the door and have your first meeting and say hello.
Right, right. I always told my son, I say, you better be nice to your neighbors, because when stuff hit the fan, they are more likely to help you than the government or the police or whatever, because they'll be busy somewhere else, right? So
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Any personal stories that you'd like to share with our listeners? Trying to inspire them, maybe.
You mean in the virus, or just kind of anything?
You personally, going through this this confinement, and maybe I don't know, just.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of go back to what I said before, that I almost feel bad saying that my life is relatively unchanged, because I know other people, it's been completely turned upside down, their whole routine. But it has made me examine, like, am I really happy being as introverted as I am? Or do I, when things are a little more, or do I want to start going out more? Do I want to meet more people? And the answer is yes. So, because it's kind of sad that my life is the same, but it's I'm lucky, but it's also unfortunate. I think it's causing a lot of people to look at how they live and what they want to do. And one thing, another nice thing besides kind of getting to know neighbors that I think is coming out of this is, valuing in-person connection, because the internet is amazing. I mean, many of us wouldn't even have livelihoods without it, but it is no substitution for being face-to-face, eye-to-eye with people in a room, for shaking hands, for hugging. And I attend many of the sort of low-carb and keto-oriented conferences all around the country. And of course, they've all been canceled, or some of them have gone to virtual meetings. It's not the same. And I'm grateful that we can do it virtually, but we've become so invested in the digital world right now. And I'm, like I said, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for things like Zoom. I'm grateful for all these different platforms, but the art of the interpersonal interaction has been lost. And I think my relationships with people, let's say I quote unquote know people from Twitter or Facebook or something, or Instagram, and I've been following them. Maybe we've even been interacting online for a year or 2 or 3 years. When I meet them in person at an event, then after that, the subsequent interactions online are so different, because I feel like I have a much different connection with that person. So I think this is making us value that much more actually being with other humans in person. Right, right.
There's probably some chemical reaction that happens when we meet with real people versus just online.
There probably is, because I know with the physical touch, I mean, isn't that like an oxytocin thing, or like the pair bonding, even just, it's like non-sexual touch, like holding hands, hugging, just being arm in arm with somebody as friends. That, I think we underestimate the importance of that in health.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. Mr. Mark. He's taking his nap.
It's only the third one of the day. Why not? Amy, you've given us a lot of details so far. Obviously, people might want to get in touch with you and find out more about what you do and so on. What are your websites that people can see more about you on?
Yeah, thank you. My main site is tuitnutrition.com. I'm TUIT nutrition.com. And I am on YouTube. My channel name is also called To It Nutrition. And I just, recently came out with an ebook. It's called The Stall Slayer, and the website for that is stallslayer.com. And right now it's just a PDF. You can download it as a electronic, or if you want to read it in hard copy, you can just print it out. It's going to be on Amazon soon. There'll be a version for Kindle and a paperback print-on-demand version. So let's see, we're recording this on June, the 23rd today, or 22nd? So I'm not sure when this will air, but hopefully, probably sometime in July, the book will be on Amazon. So you can look for that. And Yeah, like I said, I do work with clients. So if you're interested in starting or troubleshooting a lower carb or ketogenic or even paleo diet, most people don't come to me for paleo anymore, which is kind of, it's unfortunate. I mean, as effective as keto is, and as much as I love it, not everybody needs strict keto. So
No.
many people absolutely thrive on a paleo diet, eating plenty of fruit, plenty of starchy vegetables, but not grains, things like sweet potatoes and beets and parsnips. And it's something I talk about a lot on YouTube, that we've demonized carbohydrate a bit too much, and clearly not everybody needs to go on a crazy, super strict low carb diet. So.
Super. So that's your website. Are you on Facebook and Twitter and all the other?
Thank you. Twitter, my
things?
handle also is Two It Nutrition. I have a Facebook page. I don't like Facebook very much, and I don't know why. I can't really explain why. I just don't. It's overwhelming to me. So you can find me on Facebook, but my main social media home is Twitter, and then Twitter and YouTube, I would say.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now we've got to almost, many people think, to the end of this sort of COVID episode. How have you prepared yourself for sort of coming out of isolation, for getting more back to normal, whatever the new normal happens to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't even really given it much thought, to be honest. Being as introverted as I am, I think I have to do, like, some people can't wait to get out and just go everywhere and see everything. And for me, I think it's going to be a little slower. There's going to be certain places that I'd like to go first, or certain things I'd like to do. But I have to be careful not to overwhelm myself, because it's going to go from seeing nobody and being really quiet and doing nothing to all of a sudden everything, and I'll just have to pace myself. But I don't blame anyone else for just wanting to go out and do everything as soon as possible, because other people are wired differently from me, and they really feel they're very uncomfortable now being at home or being in a more quiet situation. But like I said, one thing I'm looking forward to is investing a little more in the community. And I don't mean like financially investing. I just mean kind of putting down roots and getting to know more people, and becoming even to the point of becoming a regular at some of the more independent, smaller businesses near me. That I think is part of, goes back to what we were saying before about just cultivating these relationships with people that are near you rather than 5,000 miles away.
Yeah, good point. And now the other thing we've been promised is this infamous second or even third wave.
Yeah, I don't know what'll come of that. I think we're seeing that in the US, that some of these cities that opened up are having increases. I don't know how bad it's going to get, but I think we are starting to see that. But at the same time, I don't know what to believe. The numbers coming out of different places, and it's hard to know what's accurate. I think it's just hard to know what is reliable information anymore.
Yeah. Well, I would agree.
Yes.
The basis of my question, though, is if there is a second wave, or even if there's something else that comes down the pike at some point, have you changed your nutrition approach, the way you look after yourself, to ramp up things so that your immune system is even more stronger than it has been before?
Right. That's a good question. My weakest link in terms of overall health is probably sleep. I don't sleep enough, so probably prioritizing sleep a little more. And to be honest, I'm probably not as careful as I should be, even with hand washing and masking. I'd probably just have to be a little more careful with all that. I fall into this place where I shouldn't be, which is, it's not that I feel immune, but I do feel less at risk than a lot of other groups. But I I can't really take that for granted. I kind of have to take more seriously, well, less at risk doesn't mean no risk.
Yeah.
And, you know, even now, like I was saying, I still go for my long walks, and being outdoors, I think wearing a mask makes a lot less sense outdoors, especially if I walk by myself. I'm not walking in a group of people where we're chatting and particles are passing back and forth. But on the streets that I walk in, you know, I'll pass other walkers, and we do try to distance. If we see somebody headed our way, we both kind of move to the side, or one person steps into the street. But I get nervous, you know, even when that happens. I don't want to wear a mask when I'm out in 90-degree heat in the South to walk, but maybe I should. I don't know. It's uncharted territory for all of us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's one of those things we've just got to sort of take as it comes, I guess.
Yeah.
And be sensible.
Yeah.
Super.
It's very, you know, I personally don't even know anyone that's contracted the virus. So it's easy for me to maybe have certain behaviors because it's like almost foreign to me. It's like an outside thing that I don't really have a lot of. I watch it on the news, and it's like watching a movie. It's like, oh, that doesn't really pertain to me. But it could. I mean, right now, I could be one of these asymptomatic carriers. I could have it right now and not know it. So I think that's something that we all kind of need to keep in mind. You might have it, and you might feel perfectly well.
Now, I mean, you've actually sort of done a nice segue into sort of the next question I've got. Vaccines. I mean, untested vaccines. Where would you stand on that?
Oh boy. It's like the ventilator question. I don't have enough experience to comment. I certainly think vaccines for other things like polio and measles and all that kind of stuff, I'm in favor of you know, vaccinations for the regular stuff. As for this, I'm not a virologist, I'm not an immunologist, so it's not my area of expertise, but I find it hard to believe that we could develop a vaccine for this that quickly, that would be tested deeply enough and strongly enough that it would be safe to apply population-wide, because we don't even have a vaccine for HIV. For something that's been around for decades now, that millions of people are affected by, we don't even have a vaccine for that. Yet we think within weeks or months we're going to have a vaccine for this. Maybe we will. I'm not saying a miracle won't happen. I just find that very hard to believe that we are going to develop something like that quickly. And not only develop it that quickly, but be able to say reliably that this is absolutely safe to start giving it to everybody. I have a lot of doubt about that.
I mean, if that's the case, then what would the powers that be need to do in order to convince you that it was safe?
Oh gosh.
Don't get me started now.
You were saving all the hard questions for the end.
That's my job.
I don't know. I guess, I don't have a good answer for that.
If it makes you feel any better, neither do they. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Neither do they.
No.
I don't even know, like with the traditional vaccines, I don't know how those are even tested first. So I guess whatever process that goes through, but. Oh, that's a good question.
With all the horror stories you already hear about regular vaccines, especially on children, and people with weaker immune system, like the older population, I'm not getting vaccinated. I do everything in my power to increase my immune system or to protect it, but the issue then becomes more complicated when there's talks of forcing everyone to be vaccinated against one's will, and that, to me, that's a big no-no.
Well, it goes against every human right we've ever had, doesn't it, really?
Yep.
Yeah, it does. I mean, even for the other vaccines, there's exemptions. You know, there's certain exemptions, or if you don't want to, you know, if your school district has a requirement that your children have to be vaccinated, I guess if you elect not to, you can homeschool. There's options. I don't know what we would do with this. It's like some doctors and public health experts want to put statins in the water. God forbid that should happen. You know, we should
with fluoride.
Yeah, we should at least have autonomy over our own bodies. You know, it's.
I would agree.
It would be a good time to bring out the old "my body, my choice," right?
Yeah, and that, you know, that means a lot of different things to different people, but yeah, it's. I mean, if you know, look at all the people that won't even wear a mask. If you won't even wear a mask in a public place where you should be wearing one, maybe it's an enclosed kind of space, then do we think everybody is going to stand for being forcibly vaccinated against this? You know.
Well, there's a very simple answer, I think, to that. If someone objects to you not wearing a mask, who is wearing a mask, you say, well, who does the mask protect? And they will go, well, the person wearing it. So you're protected. What's the problem? Why do you need me to wear one, as it were?
Right. Well, no, I mean, it's, and again, not my area of expertise. I shouldn't even be like saying anything about any of this, but from what I understand, which could be wrong, the mask actually, it's not so much that it prevents you from getting infected and prevents every particle from coming in. It doesn't. I mean, like only a surgical grade mask can come close to that. But it at least reduces, it doesn't prevent, but it reduces the number of particles coming out of you if you have a mask on. So you are essentially protecting other people from yourself. Like for example, if I am an asymptomatic carrier, if I have the virus and don't know it, you don't want me talking right in your face, spraying whatever's coming out of my mouth right at you. Isn't it better that, and of course, if I wear a mask, it's not keeping every single particle in, but it's reducing some of it. And it, again, from what I hear, I can only go by what I hear and what I read in the news and stuff. It seems to be that the level of the degree of exposure is a factor. So if I can reduce somebody else's exposure, isn't that helpful in some way? If we all reduce everyone else's exposure, then in theory,
a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was at a restaurant Saturday evening with a friend, and there was, well, in Texas, the rules so far, I think they're about to change again because of the cases increasing, but the rule so far was a restaurant could reopen no more than 50% capacity, 6 feet between tables. And that was it, right? Well, the restaurant where we went to, they absolutely refused for us to sit inside. And we were the only people in the whole place.
And they made you stay outside?
Yeah, it was like 95 degrees outside and humid, and we didn't want to be outside. And so we say, you know, I showed the person at the counter, I said, we could just sit down in the corner and you'll be 12 feet away from me. You don't, you know, and she said, no, you can't do that. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, I probably should have walked out and not ordered food, but I just, you know, didn't want to create a fuss. But so, you know, sometimes people take these precautions to an extreme, which is very frustrating because, you know, you don't, I mean, you go out to a restaurant to eat food, but you also, it's a social thing.
Yeah.
So if you can't even have that, I mean, I might as well stay home, just invite my friend over and be done with it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of restaurants that even if they're allowed to open, they're not, because 50% capacity, they don't even break. They would actually lose money because if they can't afford to pay the staff, if they're not making enough in profit to even buy the food and the supplies they need and pay the workers, it's better for them to stay closed. So
yes and no. Yes and no, because I used to own, I mean, I'm a chef, I used to own a business. You still have to pay your rent, you still have to pay utilities. So you might as well, even if you run out only 50%, which means you have less employees to pay, but you still bring some income that helps pay the bill, even if they don't cover all the bills, because they don't. Right. Then at least you should try that. But I guess some restaurants are rich enough that they don't even need that.
Right. No, that's a good point, though. And I see you know that as a chef. I don't.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think, again, I'm not an expert, but my gut sense is that there's a lot of over precaution out there. And probably if this had been handled better from the beginning, look at a lot of the European nations, or in Asia especially, where they took measures very early on, and there was mass adoption. They didn't have to shut down quite to the extent that we have. And I think I won't blame any particular political party or anything. I think there's enough blame to go around, including just everyday citizens. The difference in a place like South Korea or a place like China or Japan is that the population is very obedient, very into the collective good. They're not as like rugged, individualistic as we are in the U.S.
Yeah.
And most of them are willing to make more sacrifices of their own personal freedoms for the greater good. And if more Americans had been willing to do that in the early stages, it might not have needed to get to the point that it has. But I don't think we can say for certain. But I think the reason it had to get so extreme is because we weren't willing to adopt lesser measures earlier on.
Well, that's the main problem. They dragged their feet out to the point where it was too late to do anything. Because to me, South Korea is the example of what's the right way to handle a situation. You test people early on, and you test massively. Then the people are sick, send them to a hospital where they can be taken care of. You don't send them back home, like some countries did, or what they do in this country. And so you protect the population from people being sick, and then and leave the healthy people alone, as long as they wear a mask. And this is how they did it. And their death rate is tremendously lower than Europe and America, and Brazil and Argentina and all these countries.
Yeah.
So there's two. Although those countries are somewhat limited, Northern Europe countries like Sweden, Norway, and they decided to go for the general immunity, to allow people to just live their life and and come what may, and had some people would say mixed results with that. Brazil is probably the worst in that particular case, where their president decided, I'm not going to do anything. Of course, the governors had the right to change that. So, but for me, there's a clear evidence that South Korea and Japan and Hong Kong are the best. With China, I have mixed feelings, because they could just literally lock you down, physically, or throw you in jail if you don't listen. Right. But in a more democratic countries like Japan, and they pay attention, they listen, and they do the right thing, and they expect the population to abide, which typically in the Western world is not quite as obedient, like you say.
Right. And I think in East Asia, even when there's not this kind of pandemic, you'll often see, Asian people walking through airports with masks anyway. Like if they just have a regular cold or a regular illness, they do that as a courtesy to other people. So it's almost a normal part of their cultural practice anyway. This now, it's just adopted massively by everybody, but it seems, and maybe I'm stereotyping, I don't know, but I just feel like you kind of see that more in those East Asian countries where when they just have a regular garden variety illness, they wear a mask anyway.
Well, for one reason, the major reason is typically those countries much more packed together. The population is much closer. We have bigger spaces, so people feel like safer, around, unless you live in New York City. Or I think my slightly humorous take on this is that when the American government realized that they messed up, basically, they tried to scare the crap out of us. So we now everybody's scared, so they're willingly, or they're so afraid that they stay home and they don't,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I mostly agree with you. I think there's excessive measures being taken. I think it's overkill, and I'm not I am not a virus denier. Like, clearly it's a major situation. Clearly many thousands of people have lost their lives. I mean, I'm not a virus is a hoax person by any stretch, but I do think we've maybe gone a little overboard in the protective measures. And I have to be careful when I say that. My boyfriend is a physician, and he's very concerned about this. Like, very, we can't really talk about it in detail much, because he thinks that, this is the appropriate. I would say he agrees with me that we need certain measures now because we didn't take the lesser precautions at an earlier time. So it could have been managed better, but now, being where we are, it's almost like, well, it's too late now. Now we really have to pull out all the measures. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks, and toward, as we get into the deeper summer, if there is more big rises, or a second wave, third wave, whatever they call it.
Especially after all these demonstrations and and rallies and all that. It should be interesting to see. Some people already saying, or claiming that because all these demonstrations were out in the open, that there will be no consequence. I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I can't predict.
Okay.
Is there anything we should have asked you that we haven't, Amy?
Let's see. No, I'll just reiterate that point, that this virus has really brought to the forefront just how important it is to be healthy. And that's, healthy is a very broad term. I mean, there are certain things that are going to happen that you can't control. You could get into a car accident. You could have some type of freak thing that takes away from your health, which that's a separate issue from problems that are almost entirely self-induced, whether through diet or lifestyle or certain things. And nobody has to be perfect. I mean, none of us is perfect, but there's always room for improvement to some degree, whether it's your diet or your sleep or your stress or getting fresh air and sunlight. I'm pointing here because my window's over there. And I think we have to move the conversation away from weight, because, like I said before, everybody's so focused on obesity this and obesity that. Well, what about all the millions upon millions of people living with type 2 diabetes and PCOS and hypertension and cardiovascular disease and migraines and skin problems and all kinds of things that are not overweight? And I think we see this with COVID. Obesity is one factor, but obesity in a lot of people is not the cause of the health problems. It's actually one more symptom. If you have this chronic underlying metabolic syndrome or chronically high insulin, putting on excess body fat is one effect of that. And it's that chronically high insulin that drives the high blood pressure, in many people, the type 2 diabetes, all of these issues that, and again, having better metabolic health does not make any of us immune, but it does seem to reduce the risk significantly. And so if you are very far from where you want to be health-wise, start making your way toward. You don't have to change your whole life overnight. What can you start doing? Can you start eating less sugar? Can you start eating less, however we defined processed foods or refined food? Can you start cooking more from whole, simple ingredients? These are little things that this should be a wake-up call to the whole world, but really to the U.S., because we are pretty much the sickest. This should be a wake-up call to public health authorities, especially. This is not a joke that we've got however many millions of people living with diabetes. I mean, this is, and the Alzheimer's book I wrote, this is a huge tsunami that this virus pandemic probably it would have happened anyway. It might not have been as bad as it is if we as a country were in better health.
Yes. But remember, the American health care system, I call it the sick care system, is focused only on healing through medication because that's where the money is. They don't, typically, they never advocate healthy living. They don't advocate better diet. They don't advocate exercise. They don't advocate good sleep, relaxation techniques, yoga, blah, blah, blah. They just go medication, medication, medication. And this, you and I and Mark and a lot of people out there know that the first step to good health is taking care of the quality of your food, proper exercise, proper sleep, blah, blah, blah. And yet when some of the alternative, better known people out there are posting on social media, they are shut down. They are shut down. I mean, there's plenty of examples of YouTube shutting down. Sawyer G, for example, is one of them that comes to mind personally, but multiple alternative medicine proponents are being shut down and prevented from telling the truth, about healthy living, supplements, herbal medicine, blah, blah, blah. And that is just wrong. And that's how you see the influence on the pharmaceutical industry and the health industry on our daily health. They're just trying to keep us sick because the more sick we are, the more money they make, right?
That's true. I mean, I'm not a real conspiracy theorist, but you bring up a good point. There's a lot of censorship going on, and it's why, more and more of these practitioners are trying to start their own website or their own forum apart from Facebook or Twitter or any, where they have total control over their own content, because then, I think there's less likelihood for censorship that way if you own your own platform.
Right.
It's a fine line to walk, because there are people out there putting out dangerous information, but the problem is who gets to decide what's dangerous, who gets to decide what's accurate.
Yeah.
So it's rough. It's rough because a vegan diet is not an especially health promoting way to go over the long term, but they don't get censored, they don't get shut down.
No, because nowadays they're pushing for veganism.
Exactly. If anything, it's being celebrated.
Right, because it's better for the environment, right? The whole global warming environment, blah, 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 right?
Yeah. But I mean, the key is actually what Amy just said. It's not the healthiest diet. So eventually it's only going to contribute to the coffers of the pharmaceuticals, because that's where they'll go to get any form of healing that they're looking for.
Right.
Yeah, I posted a funny, I don't remember what prompted that exactly, but I read somewhere that, that some people claim cows for excess methane.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, I did a little research on that, and I found out the worst culprit for that is termites.
Really?
Termites, when they digest, and they create like 10 times more methane than the cows do. So I said, let's eat termites. Stop eating. Well, that's another trend, right? Eating insects. That's a new.
Yeah. Although, I mentioned earlier, I work at a farm here in North Carolina twice a week, and we have beef, pork, lamb, chicken, and we do eggs and produce. We do a lot of vegetables as well. There is nothing more restorative and regenerative for the land, for the grassland, for the environment, than a cow on a piece of pasture.
Yeah.
And it's rain, it's sunlight, it's grass and cow. They don't require any extra feed. You don't have a problem with the manure, because the manure stays where it is and it becomes fertilizer. That essentially becomes topsoil. And this whole cow thing, it's got to go. And actually, I'm going to reach over here. I happen to have, you guys might already be aware, I have some friends that wrote a book called Sacred Cow. And I think they're also coming out with a documentary too. And it's about the case for sustainable, ethical, healthy meat. And not only it debunks the health, the health concerns about red meat and the environmental concerns, because they're both completely mythical, that this is harmful for the environment or harmful for the body. And it may be that the way it's done in the feedlot system might be detrimental to the land in that particular place when you get these big manure lagoons and it doesn't have anywhere to go. But if you're on a smaller farm where the animals are being moved every day or every couple of days to new pasture, they leave behind the manure, they leave behind the urine, it's full of nitrogen, it becomes fertilizer. I've seen land on this farm that I would almost say was desertified, like completely stripped, almost barren. We put some chickens on it, they stay there for a while, they poop, they eat, they do their thing, we move them on, and within a few months, it is lush and green and fertile like you can't believe. That's what these animals, what a gift they give us by giving us nourishment and food and completely restoring these landscapes. I mean, this is just...
Yeah, over the
demonization of cows is just insane.
Yeah. Over the years, we've interviewed quite a few farmers and ranchers, and what's the name of that organization? I forget, Mark. The
Savory Institute. Are you thinking out
Savory?
Yes,
Savory Institute. So we've interviewed them twice, and so we are definitely convinced that that's the way to go. But for the general public, and especially the younger crowd that, think that a bag of potato chip is vegan, that doesn't help. I mean, I used to teach vegan and vegetarian for almost 2 years, and the school had to shut down because we were not getting enough students. We couldn't survive as a school.
Oh.
So
you probably could now, for better or worse. You probably could now.
No, because that was only like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So it was definitely, the movement was definitely already there. Right. It's just that, and we had people coming from all over the world. I mean, we had people from South Africa, South America, and so on. But yet we could not, the school needed a minimum of 15 students to survive, and we couldn't even fill the classes.
What was that? Was that in Texas?
Yes, in Austin, yeah.
Okay. See, Austin, I could see a vegan move. I was in the rest of Texas. That's cattle country. I don't think you're going to have as many vegans. No. I mean, go to Portland, go to Seattle, go to New York. You can probably have a thriving vegan school. But Texas, I don't know.
But Austin, Austin is very liberal and very green, and so yes. But strangely enough, I would say we had less of half of our students coming from Austin. The rest of them were coming from all over the country. At the time, apparently, we were the only vegan, vegetarian school, commercial school that is available. But it didn't make it, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's my story. Yeah, with veganism. And I was getting trouble, arguments from my students say, "You're a paleo chef, and how can you teach vegan?" I say, "You just take the meat out, and it's vegan."
Right.
It's not that difficult, really.
Yeah, people do vegetarian keto diets. I don't recommend that approach, but you can do it, especially if you eat eggs and dairy, you might be okay, but vegan keto is, I don't recommend it. Do not recommend it.
Right. Okay. Well, this sounds like timing is about right. You need a little free time before your next interview. Right. So unless you have something else to add, we can do the closing.
No, I think that's it. Just glad to have a chance to talk to you guys again. And people, please remember my book, stallslayer.com. It's about breaking fat loss stalls on low carb and ketogenic diets. And that's the #1 reason people write to me for help is why am I not losing weight? So all the answers are in there at your fingertips.
Great.
Good job.
Well, thank you again, Amy, for being on the Low Carb Paleo Show. And as we say in Texas, à votre santé, y'all.
I love that. Thank you. Take care.
You're welcome.
All over
Bye.
Texas. Thanks
All
again.
over
Amy.
Texas. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.